120 students file into a lunchroom after a long day of class. 120 students in search of one thing, Joyce's Lunch Lady tacos. As I wait in the long line for food, I'm surrounded by 120 diverse conversations. 120 debates on question number 9 on the American Studies test. 120 jokes, laughter, and smiles. 120 couple issues, family issues, and friend issues. So many conversations, the words seem to follow you, bouncing off of every wall, the noise consumes you. That is until what seems to be the loudest bang that 120 students have ever heard radiates from that southern corner of that cafeteria. In less than a second, 120 voices are cut from our throats and replaced with fear. Every eye is shooting towards the direction in which we heard the terror. Hoping, scratch that, praying that there are no second screams or second bangs to follow. This is finally broken by a student who begins to talk. It's okay. It was just a balloon or a chip bag popping on the floor. We're okay. In a moment, 120 students are back to normal, but I'm not. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I remember the fear that traveled through 120 spines in that 26-minute span. I remember the fear, the terror we all felt. I remember hoping, scratch that, praying that there were no more bangs. And I remember that 120 students, regardless of situation, regardless of timing, and regardless of place, know what fear is. We know to get silent when there's potential danger. We know the drill. Find shelter, attack when necessary, and get out when possible. We shouldn't have to know fear, yet we do. We live in a culture where it is normal to feel terror ride through our body at any large bang. We live in a society where children are more afraid of their hallways than the dark. Today I'm going to explore that culture and how we as students can change it. I've asked multiple members of Shelby High School, including faculty and students, to recount on their experiences since they first encountered the high school. Some mention the changes they've seen in our school alone and the struggles they've faced since these changes. Others recount on the positives of being in an area such as this one. Shelby is a small agricultural town of about 2,000 people. Many of us have known our fellow classmates since our first year of kindergarten. Although we are small, we're home to some of the kindest kids you can meet. The school system is also very giving, having multiple foundations and even a free lunch program throughout our school. We are blessed with kind and understanding faculty whose sole purpose is to protect and educate their students. When students are asked minuscule questions of Shelby Public Schools, we are met with a very uniform response: happiness. But even with the happiness that radiates through the students I've interviewed, there's another uniformity I find in the answers they give me: blatant disrespect, whether it be of physical property or physical assault. And this isn't just from students. Teachers have, interestingly enough, seen a trend in the gradual diminishment of respect throughout our student body. Last week I asked 4 teachers about the change of culture since they started their teaching at Shelby High. This is what they told me.
I think I've seen a bit. I've been teaching for 23 years, and we've always had some issues with certain things, but it doesn't seem like it's more often now than what I remember it being back 20 years ago.
And if one student doesn't agree with another, it's not like we can just agree to disagree. It's either you're right, I'm right, or now because we disagree, you're a terrible person and we have to settle it some other way.
They're a lot more respectful than they are today, and that's probably been the biggest change that I've noticed. Is there seems to be a lot more disrespect for teachers, and there's a lot less, or there's a lot more apathy about their grades and their grading. So a lot of them, I mean, it seems like when I'm more concerned about their grade than they are, that's a problem.
Now I almost feel like students don't care at all about anybody else's voice but their own. And that's not all students, but I've seen that upward trend where I still have some quiet students and students who need to have like that encouragement because they're super insecure about their voices. But now I feel like a lot of the Shelby narrative is dominated by people who are really full of their voices. They don't want to hear anybody else. And I think that's a huge shift that I've seen over the years.
I also asked multiple students how they feel about the disrespect and physical fights that are happening at school. The common conception was that all of the fights that have since happened this year were unnecessary and childish. Some students went to say they felt threatened or scared of them altogether.
I just think it's dumb. Like why fight at school? Just like, if you're gonna go fight somewhere, don't do it at school. Like, it's a place to learn, not a place to fight.
Yeah, they're scary. Like, when you walk down the hallway, it's almost like I see so many people like confronting each other now, and like just the few the few fights that I've seen happen this year, it's like anyone can get thrown into it.
It makes me mad, like just like people like talk like bad about people, like don't talk bad about people like if they're not talking bad about you.
The fights they're much more frequent than they used to be, and anyone could get into a fight nowadays with how many that have been going on and like the diversity of the groups that have been fighting. So yeah, I'd say that I'm scared about it.
It's like crazy because like last year there wasn't any like fights. Like it was like so rare to see one, but now it's like once a week and it's like really bad.
I don't like them. I just think that they're really unnecessary and we shouldn't fight.
It's unnecessary and it's not the way to solve problems. It's a form of immaturity and of not even defense. It's a form of just competition that's unnecessary.
One thing we can agree on is in the last 4 years, the amount of fights have increased drastically. This year alone, we've had more fights than we can count on our fingers, but our entire student body isn't necessarily to blame. Mr. Emelander introduces an idea of a bell curve. On each end are the extremes, which make up only about 20% of our student population. The other 80% is the rest of our student body. While only 20% of us participate in school fights, the other 80% is considered the silent majority. If 80% of us spoke up, if 80% of us expressed our disappointments, we may have a less violent outcome. Every student I've interviewed, regardless of the background, have agreed that the fights that are happening make our student body look childish. To the 20% that struggle to find alternatives to fighting, this may seem like a blow at their personal character, but it's not. Every student is capable of creating safe boundaries and civil ways to respond to these issues. Eventually, our 80% could become 100%. But how do we get there? In Mr. Emelander's eyes, it starts with dialogue. In order to solve problems, we have to figure out how to talk about our problems safely and civilly.
I would love it if we could have healthy debate and still be able to then go out and get a bite to eat after school with those people. One of the things that I think we need to work on in this school climate is how to work together, how to have thoughtful conversations, not just conversations surrounded by feelings or small details, but really factual conversations, hard conversations that we can share opinions, but we can also share this is what I believe. And that doesn't make me a terrible, horrible person. And it doesn't make you a terrible, horrible person. It's simply, this is how we believe, and let's be able to work together on some of these things.
If students can master the art of using their words rather than their fists, we may no longer have to know what fear truly sounds like. Clearly, we are capable of maintaining a violent culture around our school. So why is it that we are ruling out one of the most violent acts that can be committed, school shootings? Is it because of our size and area? Is it because we've known our fellow peers and students since kindergarten? Let me introduce Red Lake, Minnesota. Red Lake, Minnesota is a small agricultural town of about 2,000. In fact, Red Lake is so small, the only reason it is on the map is because of the tragedies that happened on March 21st, 2005. Red Lake is largely an Indian reservation, known for its large lake and low income. The majority of students at Red Lake qualify for the free lunch program. On March 21st, a man walked into his neighboring high school and shot 5 students and 2 members of faculty along with his grandfather and girlfriend. If it can happen in Little Red Lake, Minnesota, it can happen here, because all tragedy is capable of happening. Even in a small town such as this one we live in, we have to identify the issues before they ever even get there. The fact of the matter is that our disrespect has gotten out of hand. Our physical fighting has gotten out of hand. Teachers, aides, and administration are not being paid nearly enough to have to deal with the behavior that Shelby High School students have been displaying. This small agricultural town is home to all of us. When we are on the ground, the town will reach for us. The teachers will reach for us. The aides, the administration, the janitors, and faculty as a whole will reach for us. When we struggle, when we disagree, when we are having a bad day, the school adjusts for us. We should be thankful for the walls that surround us and the knowledge that we are gaining. Next time you see someone struggling or arguing or fighting, I urge you to reach for them. Bring them into you. Teach them that we no longer have to be the silent majority. Together, we can create a culture that we love. Together, we will truly live up to our name. Happy Valley High. I'd like to personally thank all of the faculty and students that agreed to the interview. I'd also like to thank Mr. Isaacson and Mrs. Kramer for supplying me with the resources I need to put together for this project. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. I hope that we, as a student body, will change our culture for the better. Thank you, and good night.